Come on, bud. Come on, baby. There you go. How you doing? Huh? How you doing? Say, I gotta have a talk with you. You see this? You see this little thing right there? You know what Howard's up to? He's trying to put those GPSs on you because you've been stealing stuff from the neighbors. Howard is going to get your butt. Hey, there'll be a couple of snacks in it for you, but you'll keep an eye on all the rancho on bars. What else? Can you do that? Can you keep an eye on all the rancho? I'll keep Howard to put it in on. Hello, I'm David. I'm Howard. We're the Bellamys brothers.
We've been running this family ranch for more than 150 years.
It ain't nothing but something to do.
As far as everybody knows, we're just a nice, normal family.
We're just like everybody else. We just play music for a living. This is our life at home.
And on the road.
And you're watching
The Honky Tonk Ranch.
Woke up to the heavy sound of thunder as we rolled across the land. It's amazing what you see along the way, playing in a traveling band. Sometimes when I'm lonely, I just think about the love I have back home. Hi guys, nice to see you.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you coming out here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. Welcome to the National Medal of Honor's Preview Center. I'm Anthony Brock. I'm the Executive Director for the National Medal of Honor Institute, and I'm here joined today with Greg Waters, who's a curator for our museum. Thanks so much for coming out here. We really appreciate it.
Well, what are we going to see here?
The Preview Center gives you a little bit of taste of what the museum is going to be like. Our grand opening for the National Medal of Honor Museum is here in Arlington, Texas, and that will open up in March 2025. And so we hope today the Preview Center to give you a little bit of two parts of the story. One is a background history on the medal and our mission to honor the recipients who have earned it over the years since 1861, when commissioned by President Abraham Lincoln.
Yes, well.
And second is to give you some background on what we're doing to set the stage for telling that story and bringing those values to America.
All right, cool. Well, we brought Judy Seal with us.
Hey, Judy.
It's you.
Thanks so much for coming.
Judy has taken us through World War zones that we really wanted to go through. She's technically our international booking agent and many other.
Right.
But she's had us on the DMZ in Korea, and in a war zone in Kosovo, and several Bosnia. That.
Well, as a veteran myself, I'd like to say thank you for doing that. It means a lot to the troops when you come out there. We're all appreciate being overseas, supporting America, but having a little bit of America come out, to provide that to us is.
They really have a good time. They really do dig it. You know, we've done a few concerts and all around, from Guam to, Italy, and it all really strikes you as how young.
Yeah.
They're just kids.
Yeah. They weren't that young when I was in.
No, right. They seem that way. Now they seem that way.
Yeah.
How many recipients do you have here?
So in the history of the National Medal of Honor, there's been just over 3,500 recipients, most of those from the Civil War. Today, as a national treasure, we have 64 living recipients. Several of those who choose to reside here in Texas. We got 10 from Texas and 3 from North Texas.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Oh, it's cool. It's great. Really great.
So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the work that's been done since groundbreaking, and on the museum, on the memorial, which will be built up in Washington, D.C., and also on the Leadership Institute will be here, which has programming outreach for adults around the country and also for K-12 programs for kids, which we're real proud of as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Commitment, sacrifice, courage. The Medal of Honor, our country's highest recognition for valor in combat. It has been awarded just over 3,500 times in the vast history of our nation. Those who receive it put others over self at great personal risk, many giving even their lives for us.
I'll turn you over to Greg Waters, and he'll give you a little bit of background on the history of the medal and some of the key recipients who have received it in the past.
Right. So the medal was created in 1861 by President Abraham Lincoln, understanding that there were going to be many acts of valor on the battlefields in the Civil War that needed to be recognized. At the time, however, there were no other decorations for valor in combat. So the Medal of Honor was the only award. So, like you mentioned, many medals were awarded that today would not be awarded the Medal of Honor. Since the Medal of Honor is created, the Bronze Star, the Silver Star, the Service Crosses, all those other medals get awarded. And what happens is when that happens, the Medal of Honor becomes elevated. And it continues to get elevated until today when you have in the military what's called the Pyramid of Honor, with the Medal of Honor at the very top. So it's actually become extremely rare for the Medal of Honor to be awarded, much less so than in the Civil War.
Let's roll, America. There's a job to be done. Let's roll, America. There's a battle to be won. Wake up, America. You're too young to die. Let's roll.
Let's show you around.
So is this a military museum?
Well, that's a great question, Stephanie. Thanks. It is specifically important to us that although the characters in the story are military, that the National Medal of Honor Museum is specifically not a military museum. It's also not a history museum. It's designed to be a biographical sketch on the people that, through their actions and valor, received the National Medal of Honor. And so our focus is on them as a storytelling mechanism, but it's really about the values that are inherent in the battle. Greg, can you give us some background on some of the recipients themselves as people?
Absolutely. You guys can see these photos on the wall here. Some really beautiful images of Medal of Honor presentation. So this is the big moment when a recipient is told that he will receive the Medal of Honor, and then he's invited to the White House.
The President of the United States meets so many extraordinary individuals.
Among the most impressive are those who earn the Medal of Honor, the highest accolade our country bestows upon a member of the armed services.
The Medal of Honor is awarded for bravery in combat to those who go above and beyond the call of duty,
Risking their lives to save others, overcoming incredible odds, often making the ultimate sacrifice.
Of the estimated 40 million people who have served in the United States military since the Civil War, fewer than 4,000 have received the honor.
We salute these extraordinary Americans. We will never forget their sacrifices. We will always be inspired by their heroism.
Let's all come together to build a museum in their honor.
The National Medal of Honor Museum.
On a mission to inspire America.
Prior to Teddy Roosevelt, when he became president, made it a tradition that whenever a recipient receives a Medal of Honor, whenever possible, he was invited to the White House. Prior to that, there were a lot of battlefield ceremonies. There were some medals of honor that were awarded by mail. That doesn't happen anymore. It's a big deal now. You get the call from the president and he invites you to the White House. There's some really powerful stories on this wall. At the very end there, you can see Butch O'Hare receiving the Medal of Honor. He was one of the first aces in World War II. Butch O'Hare receives the Medal of Honor for what he does in World War II. He comes home and then he requests to go back in, and he's killed about 6 months after receiving his Medal of Honor. O'Hare International Airport, the same after his was Chicago. Next, you have John Canley. You can tell here that John Canley is much older when he receives this medal. That does happen sometimes. With his case, one of the requirements to receive the medal is that you have to have eyewitness testimony for what you did. In the case of John Canley, his unit was wiped out. There was nobody left to tell his story. So it took an act of Congress.
Where was he serving?
In Vietnam. During the Battle of Hue, during Vietnam, it took about 50 years, but he eventually does get the call to receive his Medal of Honor. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that presentation. Yeah. Also, with these kinds of stories, these medals are often awarded posthumously. The last one I'll talk about here is Desmond Doss. Desmond Doss was a conscientious objector, did not want to carry a weapon in battle. He's a really good example of about every 5 years or so, Hollywood comes around and they make a movie about the Medal of Honor, a Medal of Honor recipient. And a while back, probably 5-10 years now, they made a movie about him called Hacksaw Ridge. That was his story.
Yeah, that's so wow. So do we know how old the oldest living Medal of Honor recipient is?
The oldest living recipient is Ralph Puckett. I don't know his exact age, but he's a Korean War veteran. He's the only Korean War veteran left. Wow. It was when did 20 Blakes die? Last. Recently, we lost our last World War II recipient.
You just touched about it.
So the vast majority of living recipients now are from the Vietnam War.
All right, let's take a look at the National Medal of Honor, and we'll show you what some of the different ones are and how the different services have represented.
Okay, cool.
Let's roll, America. There's a job to be done.
Hello, I'm David.
I'm Howard
with the Bellamys Brothers. Visit us at honkytonkranch.com.
You're looking at someone who's placed duty above self. You're looking at someone who understands the meaning of sacrifice in the most profound way. And you're looking at a person of integrity, fortitude, and patriotism. You're looking at honor. And these values must be preserved, protected, and passed on to future generations. And that is why the National Medal of Honor Museum is so important.
This museum is a monument to the very best of our country. The idea that as America is timeless, and the valor it takes to protect and defend this experiment in liberty, that too will live forever, right here in this museum.
We mark a milestone moment on this historic mission to inspire America. This place, the National Medal of Honor Museum.
A greeting to a historical moment in the life of our country and in the life of the Medal of Honor recipients.
We know that what we did to earn the medal is less important than what we do with it. It does not make us special, but it does allow us to do special things, and there is nothing we have ever done that's more special than this museum.
I was one of 2 pilots in the unit that had previous experience in Vietnam. And the mountains and night were killing more of our pilots than the enemy. They told me 70 patients or so were trapped in the fog, further out into the valley, and they wouldn't let me go in initially because they didn't want to lift the artillery. But we had a technique that we could use and we could get in there. And when they saw that our aircraft come up through that fog, they knew that their buddies were going to be saved. And that's what we hope the museum will do. Inspire these young people. They'll walk in the front door. They're going to see courage, sacrifice, patriotism is something that they can have in their life, and they don't have to go to combat to do it.
So I know when you say Medal of Honor, most people think of a single Medal of Honor, but there's actually more than one, correct?
There is. There's actually 3 versions of the Medal of Honor. You guys can take a look at the examples here. The Navy creates theirs first in 1861. That is their version of the Medal of Honor. About a year later, the Army says, hey, we want one of those. So they create their version of the medal. This is the Army's version of the medal. And then about 100 years after that, in 1965, the Air Force creates their version of the Medal of Honor. That is the Air Force version of the medal. And members of the Marines and the Coast Guard receive the Navy version of the Medal of Honor.
Okay. All right. Cool. So they created it before the Civil War was ending.
Right at the beginning, yeah. They create the medal. Again, recognizing they needed to recognize the sacrifices being made.
Right.
Does that have to be action in the field for this medal?
Yeah. Historically, there was a time when there were peacetime medals, but for the vast majority of the medal, and currently, it's only for acts during combat.
Hey, Greg, where would the Space Force medal fit up?
They might create a new one someday. We don't know. We're waiting. We'll see.
That's a great question.
And we stood as one for the old red, white, and blue. Let's roll, America. There's a job to be done.
So most of the girls are wondering about Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. She sounds very interesting.
There is indeed. There's one recipient of the Medal of Honor that was a woman. She was a remarkable story, really, really powerful story, going back to actually before the Civil War. She's one of the first women to graduate from medical school in the United States. At the beginning of the Civil War, she understands what's going on. She goes to the front lines and she tries to volunteer. She's a doctor. She wants to volunteer as a surgeon. And they say, no, you're a woman. You can't join the army at that time as a woman. But they did allow her to join the nurse corps. So she becomes a nurse in the Civil War, but in reality, she was doing many of the things that the surgeons were doing in the Civil War hospitals. She was also known for going out on battlefields to take care of the wounded. At one point, she was taken prisoner. She spent time in a Confederate prisoner of war camp, eventually gets released, survives the Civil War. And at the end of the Civil War, as a act of appreciation for her service during the entire war, she's given the Medal of Honor.
Well, that's quite a story. Very cool.
Yep.
I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about her yet.
They should. I've heard whispers of that being a possibility, but not yet.
Yeah. That'd be a good subject for a movie.
Absolutely.
We're up out of the ground, right? And with that comes putting stuff on top, and that stuff comes in the form of big, heavy chunks of steel. Yes, sir. How much steel are we talking about here?
So overall, the job is going to have close to about 3,000 tons of steel. The rotunda level, the lower level, has about 550 tons. The exhibit hall level that you see above us is going to have close to about 2,500 tons of steel on this project.
2,500 tons. I know that a Ford F-150 is about 5,000 pounds, which was 2.5 tons. So that's like 1,000 Ford F-150s of weight. That's pretty incredible. And so what are we looking at here? We're looking at kind of the bottom of the exhibit deck, is that right?
Correct, yeah. So this is the floor framing structure of the exhibit hall. These 5 pieces are what we call our super nodes. They sit atop of the mega columns, as you can see, and create really that structure foundation as we get this exhibit hall going elevated.
What's it mean to you personally to get to this phase of the project?
For me, it gets me really excited. We're out of the ground, everything starts taking shape. When you see photographs of the building now, you're gonna start seeing the actual building take place. It's just super exciting.
Let's roll, America. There's a job to be done.
This is going to be one more beautiful place.
Yep, it's going to be a great facility.
Yeah,
we got to come to see this.
Yeah, we got to come back.
Hey, what in the wide world of sports is going on here? What do I pay you for? Get back to work.
Yeah, it's pretty rough around here.
It is. Come on.
Let's roll.
That dude doesn't have a clue what we're doing.
We don't know what we're doing.
We don't know who or what we are or what we're all about.
So this is actually one of the largest artifacts in our collection. This is obviously a 48-star American flag.
Yes, and it was from Pearl Harbor, right?
It was. So this flag flew aboard the USS Vestal. The Vestal, by Navy standards, is not a very exciting ship. It was a repair ship. A very important ship, however. It would play a really critical role in one of the most important days in American history. The Vestal was in December of 1941. Is in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor. On December 6th, it got a new assignment. It was told to park directly adjacent to the USS Arizona on Battleship Row. The next morning during the attack on Pearl Harbor, it was the only non-battleship on Battleship Row. In the initial phase of the attack, there's a very large explosion, which obviously caused a lot of damage to the Arizona and to the Vestal. The man that's in charge of the USS Vestal this day is a commander in the United States Navy named Cassin Young. Cassin Young, during this large explosion, is thrown off the deck of the ship. He finds himself in the harbor, surrounded by water that's on fire because there's a layer of oil on top of it. And he immediately has 2 things in mind. 1, his crew's in danger, and 2, the ship's in danger. So his immediate response to this scenario, if you guys can imagine being in this scenario, is to swim back to his ship as fast as he can through this water that's on fire, climbs back aboard, takes command of the ship, and he on purpose runs the Vestal around a sandbar that's nearby. And in doing so, he knew that he could save his ship and he could save his crew.
So he did salvage the crew and the ship.
He did.
So were there still a lot of people alive on the Vestal?
There were some heavy casualties, but many people lived, especially because of his action.
That's amazing. That is a exact.
My other favorite part about the Vestal story, in the days and weeks that followed Pearl Harbor, the vessel repaired itself first. And then it was critical in repairing all the other ships. There were damage during the time. Cass and Young receives the Medal of Honor about 6 months later on the deck of the vessel. So it wasn't a White House ceremony. They did it on the vessel.
Sorry. Was it still in Hawaii?
It was, yeah. But
That's great.
This flag is from the Vestal?
Lincoln.
Is the Vestal, is it still in existence?
It is not. It was scrapped a few years later. It was an older ship at the time, right? It had a long service life, and it was time to let it go.
Did they recycle?
Probably did, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story, though.
That is grand.
It's a really powerful symbol.
We need a tour bus like that, so then repair itself. That'd be really good.
All right, David, Howard, thank you very much for coming out here today and gracing us and getting so much attention for a National Medal of Honor Museum.
Well, thanks for having us.
It just absolutely plays into our mission to try to inspire, equip, and connect people around the values that are inherent in the Medal of Honor. And we couldn't do that without y'all getting this attention out to folks that, to make them aware of what we're working on.
Well, we all realize that we need to take a different direction in this country, and
Yeah, it's our pleasure to be here. It's our pleasure to get the word out. It's a great museum. It's going to be fabulous.
Appreciate that very much. And so on behalf of everybody here at the foundation, I want to pass on to you our challenge coin. It's got a picture of the museum, which opens up in 2025 in March on one side, and the values that are inherent in the medal on the other. And so, sir, thank you very much for your service and for bringing this out to everybody across America and making them aware of these values.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Deeply appreciate it.
I have one as well. I have one from my organization.
Oh, thank you very much,
You'll
Judy.
always remember who gave you this because of the shape of it.
I
No
will.
one else has one like that.
I will. That's perfect. Thanks, Judy. I appreciate it.
That's the hillbilly coin.
Good stuff.
And you're watching
the Honky Tonk Ranch.